Football isn't just about the glory and the highlight reels. Some of the hardest wars these guys fight happen in the shadows. Take Trent Williams, who battled a rare cancer while the world watched him play.
It was cancer. I had cancer. I had a tumor removed from my skull.
Former NFL star Hernandez suffered from a severe form of CTE.
Let's talk about Trent Williams. This guy is a titan, but his biggest threat wasn't some 300-pound linebacker. It was a lethal sickness lurking right under his skin. When he's blocking, Williams is practically untouchable, easily one of the best offensive tackles to ever lace up cleats. He is a wall, a perennial Pro Bowler and the absolute anchor for every single squad lucky enough to have him. But while he was dominating Sundays, a rare, life-ending cancer was quietly setting up shop in his body. It started back in 2013. Williams found a weird bump on his head while playing for Washington. The medical staff, they brushed it off, told him it was nothing. He took their word for it. He kept crushing defenders, totally oblivious that the thing on his head was a ticking time bomb. 6 years went by. The lump got bigger. By 2019, he couldn't hide it anymore. He went to a specialist, and that's when the hammer dropped. The diagnosis, dermatofibrosarcoma protuberans, a super rare, aggressive skin cancer. It was a nightmare scenario. Surgeons told him the tumor was inches from penetrating his skull and hitting his brain. The worst part, it should have been caught years ago. Doctors literally told him to write his will. For the first time, this invincible athlete had to stare death right in the face. He went under the knife for a massive operation to cut the cancer out. That surgery is the only reason he is still breathing. He missed the whole 2019 season recovering, and his relationship with the team was dead. After that betrayal, he swore he would never play for Washington again and forced a trade. By 2020, he was a San Francisco 49er. It wasn't just a new jersey, it was a new lease on life. He didn't just come back to the gridiron, he came back with a vengeance. He reclaimed his throne as the league's top left tackle, stacked up all-pro nods, and led the Niners to the brink of a title. Now, let's talk about Hernandez. Hernandez is the darkest chapter in NFL history, a guy rotting from the inside out, on the turf. He looked like the next big thing coming out of Florida. He was an All-American, a national champ, and got scooped up by the New England Patriots in 2010. At 20 years old, he was already tearing defenses apart. He paired up with Rob Gronkowski to form an unstoppable duo that powered the Pats to Super Bowl 46. From the outside, the kid looked like he had the world at his feet. But behind the fame, Hernandez was hiding a severe, invisible sickness. It wasn't found until the autopsy, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. This is a brain-eating disease caused by getting hit in the head over and over. Trauma Hernandez had been absorbing since he was a kid. You can't spot CTE in the living. It shows up as pure chaos rage, memory gaps, depression, and zero impulse control. Hernandez took his own life in prison in 2017. He was only 27. When Boston University cracked open his skull, they found something terrifying. The damage was horrific. He had stage 3 CTE, a level of destruction that stunned the scientists. They called it the worst case they'd ever seen in a 27-year-old. His brain looked like it belonged to an elderly dementia patient. The parts of his mind that handled judgment, fear, and emotions were practically annihilated. His family sued the league, arguing the NFL never warned players that football could do that to a human brain. Now, look at Steve Gleason. Gleason's hardest battle wasn't on special teams. It was against a ruthless disease that completely rewrote his destiny. Fans know him as the Saints legend who blocked that punt in 2006, the play that gave New Orleans hope after Katrina. That block made him immortal in NOLA. But his real legacy, that started long after he hung up his jersey. He grinded out 8 seasons in the league, mostly with the Saints. Before retiring in 2008, he was ready for the quiet life, diving into business and building a future with his wife, Michelle. Then, in 2011, his world collapsed. At just 34, doctors told him he had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. It is a terminal nightmare that shuts down your muscles one by one, trapping a sharp mind inside a paralyzed body. You lose the ability to walk, talk, eat, and eventually breathe, and there is zero cure. Gleason was staring down a slow, painful deterioration scarier than any linebacker he ever faced. But he didn't fold. Even as his body failed, he launched a crusade to help others fighting the same war. He built Team Gleason, a nonprofit that arms ALS patients with the technology they need to live. When he lost his voice, he used eye-tracking software to speak, continuing to share his brilliance with the world. The 2016 documentary Gleason showed the raw, heartbreaking reality of his life as he prepared to become a dad while dying. The man is a hero, earning a Congressional Gold Medal and the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. Finally, there's Philip Adams. Adams didn't lose to a wide receiver. He lost to a silent brain killer that hunted him down long after the final whistle blew. To the casual observer, Adams had a resume typical of a league journeyman, a guy fighting for a roster spot. He was a grinder in the defensive backfield, clawing tooth and nail to stay relevant in the pros. Picked up in the 7th round back in 2010, he suited up for half a dozen squads, bouncing between the 49ers, Patriots, Seahawks, Raiders, Jets, and Falcons. Superstardom wasn't in the cards, but he managed to forge a solid run by enduring the brutal physical punishment the game demands. But beneath the helmet, something terrifying was happening. His mind was quietly breaking down. Then came April 2021, and the sports community froze. Adams committed a horrific mass shooting in Rock Hill, South Carolina, only to turn the gun on himself the very next day. Gone at just 32, left with zero answers. His family donated his brain to science, desperate to understand how a clean record could turn into such a nightmare. The lab results unveiled a grim reality. Adams was suffering from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the brain killer known as CTE. Pathology reports showed a shocking level of stage 2 CTE, with his frontal lobes, the command center for judgment and emotional breaks, completely ravaged. Experts called the degradation grotesque, something you almost never see in a guy that young. It explained everything: the paranoia, the sudden rage, the memory gaps, and the total lack of impulse control. Relatives later confessed he'd been fighting demons for a long time, plagued by agonizing pain, sleepless nights, and a personality that just shifted. His dad didn't mince words, wondering aloud if the game destroyed his son, blaming the endless collisions Adams took on the gridiron. Jovan Belcher belongs to that tragic fraternity of players whose deadliest enemy wasn't across the scrimmage line, but rotting away inside their own skull. Between the hashes, Belcher was a sledgehammer, a defender who earned his stripes through pure grit and violence. Ignored in the draft coming out of Maine, he signed with Kansas City and literally fought his way into the starting lineup at inside linebacker. By 2011, he was a defensive staple, racking up heavy tackle numbers and locking down a fresh contract ahead of the 2012 campaign. In the locker room, he looked like the model pro, building a steady life in the league. But nobody saw the invisible scars, the neurological havoc wrecking him from the inside out. Then, December 2012 hit like a bomb. Belcher committed a murder-suicide that ended his story at 25. Afterward, his family sent his brain for analysis, praying for clarity. The diagnosis came back positive: chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Specialists discovered tangled knots of tau, protein choking key parts of his brain, the areas governing memory, emotions, and the ability to just stop and think. The consensus was clear: this wreckage was the direct result of years of head-on collisions in the trench. The fallout was instant lawsuits piled up, forcing the league to finally look the monster of brain trauma in the eye. Ken Stabler stands as a legend whose fiercest battle wasn't against a pass rush, but against the silent killers stalking him long after hang-up-the-cleats time. As the Oakland Raiders general, he was the face of 70s football: tough, creative, and ice-cold when it mattered most. The man was hardware personified MVP in 1974, 4 Pro Bowls, and the arm that delivered the Raiders their first Lombardi trophy in Super Bowl 11. Fans saw a gunslinger who could walk through fire, but off-camera, his body was cashing checks it couldn't cover. By February 2015, doctors handed him a death sentence: advanced colon cancer. It was already stage 4. Leaving him with basically 0 moves left on the board. 5 months later, on July 8th, 2015, the snake was gone at 69. The news gutted the sport, marking the exit of a true icon. But the post-game analysis revealed a truth even darker than the cancer. Honoring his request, his brain went to the Boston University CTE Center. The findings were terrifying. Stage 3, CTE. The damage was systemic, proving the disease had been eating away at his mind for decades. Near the end, the symptoms were all there: the fog, the headaches, the ringing ears, the sleepless nights, and the emotional roller coaster. His inner circle knew he suspected the game had broken him, and he wanted his autopsy to serve as a warning for the next generation. It was a wake-up call, shattering the myth that quarterbacks were somehow immune to brain trauma. Now, Stabler isn't just a Hall of Famer, he's a haunting reminder that the war on the field follows you home forever. Dwight Clark gave us one of the greatest moments in sports history, but his final chapter was a brutal fight against a killer he couldn't dodge. He was the bedrock of that legendary San Francisco 49ers dynasty in the 80s. A receiver with hands of glue, he helped turn a losing franchise into a powerhouse, snagging 2 Super Bowl rings along the way. Immortality arrived on January 10, 1982, when he skied for Joe Montana's pass to sink the Cowboys, a play simply christened The Catch. That one grab shifted the tectonic plates of the NFL and made Clark a god in the Bay Area. But long after the glory days, things took a grim turn. Late 2016 brought warning signs: weak muscles, stumbling, and a body that just wouldn't listen. By March 2017, he dropped the bombshell amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. ALS? Lou Gehrig's disease. Clark suspected the game was the culprit, recalling the fog of multiple concussions from his playing days. While the science wasn't definitive, he wondered if all those hits to the helmet triggered the end. Yet, he faced the darkness with the same grace he showed on the turf. He turned his celebrity into a megaphone to sound the alarm on ALS, while riding the NFL hard to stop dragging its feet on head trauma protocols. The sickness didn't just advance, it sprinted, causing his physical state to deteriorate at a terrifying pace. Even when bound to a chair and needing 24/7 help, he felt the warmth of the Niner Empire. On June 4, 2018, his year-long war ended, and he left us at 61. Brian Bremen. Now, there's a guy who made a name for himself by running straight into collisions that other guys spent their whole careers avoiding. You wouldn't see his face on every billboard, but inside the locker room, he was the heartbeat that every coach and teammate respected. He was an absolute nightmare on special teams, a linebacker who hit the field with zero regard for his own body. Nobody picked him in 2011, so he kicked down the door in Houston, winning over the Texans crowd with sheer grit and hustle. That blue-collar work ethic paid off when he hoisted the Lombardi Trophy with Philly in Super Bowl 52, proving that grinders can become legends too. Yet, long after hanging up his cleats, Bremen stared down an enemy way scarier than any offensive lineman: a rare, aggressive brain malignancy. Diagnosed in early 2025, it hit him like a freight train, moving with shocking speed. But Bremen didn't flinch. He went straight into combat mode against the disease. He endured the whole gauntlet, going under the knife repeatedly, pumping his veins with chemo, and trying next-gen CAR T-cell therapy to sick his immune system on the cancer. For a second, it looked like a win. The mass started shrinking, but the cancer adapted, roaring back with a vengeance that his body just couldn't outrun. The scorching treatments left his defenses shattered, turning recovery into an uphill climb that ravaged his physique. With the cost of round-the-clock care skyrocketing, his circle started a GoFundMe to keep the lights on for him and his kin. The gridiron community didn't hesitate. They showed up in droves. Old squad members and supporters poured in tens of thousands, with J. Watt dropping a cool 10 grand himself, while others sent prayers and strength. Through the darkness, he never lost his spark. Fueled by the love of his 2 little girls and refusing to wave the white flag, Bremen took his final breath on July 16, 2025, gone way too soon at 38. Now, let's talk about Junior Seau, a true titan of the game. The man was a legend, but his deadliest rival wasn't wearing a jersey. It was a silent killer lurking in his own mind, invisible until it was too late. He gave the league 20 hard years, at 13 as the heart of San Diego before taking his talents to South Beach and New England. We're talking about a 6-time All-Pro and member of the 90s All-Decade squad. A guy famous for hits that rattled teeth and an engine that never idled. Everyone saw a gladiator who shrugged off pain. Nobody saw the catastrophic toll mounting inside his skull with every collision. Once the cheering stopped, the demons woke up sleepless nights. Emotional walls and a crushing darkness took over. His ex-wife, Gina, said the man barely slept for the last 7 years of his life, leaning hard on heavy prescription meds just to close his eyes. She spilled that, while the doctors never officially flagged him for concussions, he was constantly dealing with the fog and pain of head trauma. He just shook it off and played on. Tragedy struck in May 2012 when Seau left this world at 43. No letter was found. Just a final digital goodbye, telling his kids and ex-wife they were loved. Searching for answers, his grieving family handed his brain over to the National Institutes of Health. By January 2013, the lab results dropped a bombshell. Seau's brain was riddled with chronic traumatic encephalopathy. The microscope revealed the ugly truth: cellular decay, matching the profile for a disease known to cause wild mood swings, memory gaps, and dark, self-destructive urges. Every independent expert who looked at the slides nodded in agreement. This was the missing puzzle piece explaining his downward spiral. His death wasn't just a headline, it became the watershed moment for the CTE conversation in pro sports. His family took the fight to the courts, claiming the league hid the dangers, and they eventually reached a quiet settlement in 2018. Then there's Kevin Turner, another warrior whose toughest scrimmage wasn't on the turf, but a civil war happening inside his own cells. During his 8-year stint with the Pats and Eagles, he was the classic smash-mouth fullback who loved contact. Before the pros, he was a stud on Bama's '92 title team, building a resume based on smashing into people at full speed. Nobody guessed that using his head as a battering ram was writing a death sentence that would get served way too early. The bad news broke in June 2010, ALS, the same monster that took Lou Gehrig. As his body shut down, Turner signed off on donating his brain and spine. Convinced the game he loved was the culprit, he didn't go quietly. He became a face of the massive concussion lawsuit, using his fading health to demand the league own up to the damage. He let the cameras roll, showing the world exactly what that disease does to a man. He showed up in Ty Herndon's music video and laid it all bare for HBO's American Man, documenting the brutal reality of his daily survival. Even as his voice weakened, his message got louder through his foundation, screaming about the link between gridiron hits and ALS. Kevin Turner tapped out on March 24, 2016. He was only 46. Later that year, the brain experts at Boston University dropped the verdict. Turner had a horrific case of CTE. The medical team connected the dots while ALS killed him. It was the CTE from all those helmet collisions that likely pulled the trigger. Dave Duerson spent his life shutting down opponents. But his true nemesis wasn't on the turf. It was a silent, lethal disease eroding his sanity, anchoring the historic '85 Bears defense. This 4-time Pro Bowl safety was feared for his ferocious hits and razor-sharp instincts. He expanded his trophy case with the Giants and Cardinals, securing 2 Super Bowl titles across an 11-year saga of gridiron warfare. However, behind the glory and the highlights lay a dark reality of repeated skull-rattling impacts that were slowly destroying him. That violence followed him into retirement, even as he built a business empire after 1993. His mind was beginning to betray him. At just 50 years old, the agony became too much, and he ended his life with a chest wound specifically to save his brain for study. His suicide note was a selfless final act, urging his family to let scientists examine his head to help future players survive. The team at Boston University confirmed the nightmare, diagnosing him with an advanced stage of chronic traumatic encephalopathy. The pathology revealed a brain ravaged in areas controlling memory and impulse. Drop a comment below on how the game needs to change. Before you click away, crush that like button and hit subscribe on NFL Rivals to keep up with our latest breakdowns.